Jane's Walks, an annual celebration of walking in New Westminster, was interrupted by COVID-19 last year, but it's back in 2021 with some modifications. To talk about this, as well as other pedestrian-related issues, Century House member and longtime walking advocate Mary Wilson joins us on this edition of Talk NewWest. Welcome to Talk NewWest.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
For those of us less familiar with Jane's Walks, what can you tell me about this initiative?
Well, I can tell you a lot because I actually was the person who introduced it to New Westminster. I didn't introduce it to the world, but to New Westminster. It's an annual event. It's happening in New Westminster again this year on May the 7th, 8th, and 9th. It's a celebration of walking. And in order to understand Jane's Walk, you have to understand where it came from, and you have to know a little bit about Jane.
And the Jane we're talking about is Jane Jacobs. So can you explain that connection?
It's certainly not me. And I've had people stop me on the street and say, "Aren't you Jane?" And no, just because I do Jane's Walk doesn't make me Jane. Jane Jacobs, you're absolutely right. And she was born in early May, 2016, I think. And she was an activist. She was a writer. She was very opinionated. She was very outspoken. And she lived a chunk of her life in the US, where she wrote the book that she's most famous for, which is Death and Life of Great American Cities. It's in the library. You can find out so much about her online and whatever, and in the library, books about her and books by her. She moved to Canada and she lived in Toronto. And she really fought against excessive infrastructure for cars and vehicles in the city. The city had to have more equity. This is a city, not a freeway. So she died in 2006. And the following year, her friends and colleagues in Toronto initiated Jane's Walks in her memory to celebrate her legacy, to her ideas and her birthday. So that's where Jane's work started. It was in Toronto in 2007.
Okay, so now, so what's the format of Jane's Walks?
Well, it's changed quite a bit since 2007 when it started. When it started, there were a few key things that you had to keep in mind in order to run a Jane's Walk event in your town, in your community. And they had to be free. They had to be led by volunteers. No cost involved at all. You just were told somebody volunteered to do a walk and posted it on a website, and people just showed up if they wanted to go along. It was so informal. It was so casual. It was so easy. Mm-hmm.
It's not, so it's got more complicated, or?
Yes, because it has changed over time since then. One of the bad things is that, like everything else in the world, it's become more and more on the computer. And when you start to get everything done on the computer, it gets more complicated. And some people say, but I don't have a computer. I don't use a computer. And that makes it more complicated. But the easier part is that just in the last couple of years, the people in Toronto have said, look, why don't we sort of allow every community who wants to do it their way? So instead of being centralized in Toronto, it's now autonomous with the communities that want it. I wanted to show you this. This is a Jane's Walk manual. This is from 2013, and it says right in the front here, these are the walks in this book. There's a walk in Edmonton. There's a one in Jerusalem. There's one in Saskatoon. There's one in Zurich. There's one in Vancouver. There's one in Slovenia. They're from all over the world, and people are doing the same kind of thing. Simple idea. I say, next Saturday, I'm going for a walk at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll meet you at the credit union. You want to come, you show up. And that's all there is to it. And you go for a walk.
And you're picking the location because you like to walk there, or there's some historic interest, or can it be just...
I showed you this book, and I want to tell you that New Westminster had a walk in this book full of worldwide walks. Look,
Okay, I can see. All
I
right.
said, I've got books that are due back at the library. Meet me down at the corner by my house and we'll go take my books back to the library. How simple is that? Right? I mean, really, Kurt, how simple is that?
Now, where can you get a hold of that Jane's Walks manual?
This one?
Yeah.
Well, since Toronto stopped being the key center of all of this stuff for the world, they don't print this anymore. But I kept it, of course, because I'm in there.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really special for me, and it was an example. It was an example of the kind of walk that really makes a Jane's Walk. It's so simple. It's so ordinary. You know, you walk down the lane, you lean over the fence, you talk to somebody about their garden, you admire the art, you say, oh, that looks interesting, let's go there. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of a simple walk. You walk, it's a walking conversation. It's not a walking workout. It's a walking conversation.
So now I'm assuming that with COVID, that kind of threw a spanner in the works. How is it adapted for this year?
What a headache. What a headache. Last year, it was the same thing last year, you know, everything got canceled last year as well. And last year I followed the herd and said, well, all of these events are canceled, so we're not doing it in 2020. Then it came down to 2021 and I thought it'll be over by then. Of course, it's not over by then. So the option was, do you want to cancel it again? And I said, hey, let's quit thinking about what we can't do. Let's start thinking about what we can do. So when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, right? And I thought, right, let's see what we can, if we can do it differently. And so I thought, this might be an opportunity to put a Jane's Walk self-led, not led by a person, a volunteer. But so we decided that we would have the volunteers who normally would lead a walk contribute a map and a walk. We put it on the website, and then they could say, oh, that looks interesting. My family and I, with our masks on, keeping social distancing, we'll go and do that walk at our convenience. And I thought, we'll give that a try and see how it works this year. I don't think it's as good as if I was taking people for a walk on 12th Street here, I would tell them rumor and gossip and scandal, but you can't do that on the website. You have to keep, so they're not quite as gritty but they're good. That'll be good. So we're giving it a try and see what happens. But I go back to what I said before. You're dealing with a lot more computer technology stuff, and I find that really, really stressful.
But given the circumstances, it's like us doing this Zoom interview. I mean,
that's right. And I have to tell you, I hate Zoom, but it's that or nothing. So you do what you can with what you've got dealt. So
let's see. If people want to participate,
yes,
where do they go?
I've started to post the walks. There's about 4 walks posted right now on the Walkers Caucus website, which is their local walking advocacy group. That's www.walkerscaucus.ca. And / Jane's Walks. You'll find the listing there. I'm listing the titles of the walks right now. By the end of next week, middle of next week, end of next week, by the beginning of May, I will have the maps and the instructions posted on that website so people can go and look at it. They can download it onto their cell phones. They can print it out if they want to and say, oh, let's try this one. There should be about 8 or 10 of them at least.
So, okay, so I go to the website, I decide I want to go on a walk. I've got the information. So me and my bubble can go up and go for the walk.
Yes.
And we miss out on the scandal and the
gossip. That's for next year when all this is over.
Okay. Now, you obviously are a serious walkers advocate. Apart from Jane's Walks, what's at the top of your priorities, if that's possible?
Personally, at the top of my priorities is succession planning. I'm trying to find I'm trying to find some younger, more enthusiastic people that I can mentor. I would love to mentor some younger people and say, you know, it's time to get some younger people enthusiastic about how you get around the city on foot and how that fits into the whole sustainable transportation picture. And that's personally, succession planning is personally my top of the line one. But for Walker's Caucus itself, which is the advocacy group, I'd say right now the most hot topic is the Patello.
Okay, and I've seen they've started tearing down trees and making way for the new bridge.
They have indeed.
What's your what's your concern with fellow planning?
Well, you know, most cities these days, most communities these days, I like to boast about having community input in their decision making, right? So they're very happy when they've got a group that represents the bicycles or a group that represents walkers, because then they can call them in, have consultations and meetings with them, and say we've done a lot of community consultation with the stakeholders. It's always good for politics. Anyway, so we were invited in by the design team from Victoria to sit at some meetings and be shown the diagrams of what they intended for not just the cars, but also for people who are on foot and who are on wheels in that particular project. And they were very good. The designers were very good about modifying and changing their plans because of what we pointed out to them, except for one major point. And we butted heads on the Central Valley Greenway, and they wouldn't back down, and we're not backing down. So it's escalating up to local politicians, provincial politicians, and as far as it needs to go. So that's a big one right now.
Okay. This has been fascinating, and I love doing these kinds of things because I learned so much. But perhaps we can have you back and see how you're doing with your Patello Bridge planning in a future interview.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. The Walker's Caucus has a strategic plan, and we list some of the projects that are going on this year that the city wants us to get involved with. You know, things like the Sapperton Green development, things like the Uptown 6 and 6 development, something that, like these Agnes Street Greenway, all of those things. They're all worth an interview.
Well, then it sounds like we got a deal. So the strategic plan, that's on the Walker's Caucus.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I recommend people go to the Walker's Caucus website and look at the blog, the Jane's Walks. Listen, Walk 30 is coming up the day after Jane's Walks weekend. Walk 30 is the annual competition between Burnaby and New Westminster for who gets more people out walking. And you can find out all about that on the Walker's Caucus website too.
Oh, that's just opened up a whole new world for me.
I hope so.
Anyway, I want to thank you very much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.